World War I or the First World War, July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918, was a global conflict fought between two coalitions, the Allies and the Central Powers. Battles took place throughout Europe, the Middle East, Africa, the Pacific, and parts of Asia. At exactly 11 o'clock Paris time on November 11, 1918, World War I was declared to end with an armistice, ending one of the largest and most devastating wars in human history. What are the causes? Let's find the cause together. Immediate causes. Assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand by Serbian nationalists, June 28, 1914. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir presumptive to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife, Sophie, Duchess of Hohenberg, were shot dead after a wrong turn by 2 gunshots in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, one of a group of 6 assassins, 5 Serbs and 1 Bosniak, coordinated by Danilo Ilic, a Bosnian Serb and a member of the Black Hand Secret Society. The assassination was significant because it was perceived by Austria-Hungary as an existential challenge and so was viewed as providing a casus belli with Serbia. Emperor Franz Joseph was 84 and so the assassination of his heir, so soon before he was likely to hand over the crown, was seen as a direct challenge to the empire. Many ministers in Austria, especially Berchtold, argued that the act must be avenged. But this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. July crisis. Following the murder, Austria-Hungary sought to inflict a military blow on Serbia, to demonstrate its own strength and to dampen Serbian support for Yugoslav nationalism, viewing it as a threat to the unity of its multinational empire. However, Vienna, wary of the reaction of Russia, a major supporter of Serbia, sought a guarantee from its ally, Germany, that Berlin would support Austria in any conflict. Austria-Hungary made its ultimatum to Serbia on July 23. Before Serbia replied, Russia ordered a secret, but noticed, partial mobilization of its armed forces. Though Russia's military leadership knew they were not yet strong enough for a general war, they believed that the Austro-Hungarian grievance against Serbia was a pretext orchestrated by Germany, and considered a forceful response to be the best course of action. While the United Kingdom was semi-formally aligned with Russia and France, many British leaders saw no compelling reason to get involved militarily. The UK made repeated offers to mediate, and Germany made various promises to try to ensure British neutrality. However, fearing the possibility of Germany overrunning France, Britain entered the war against them on August 4, and used the German invasion of Belgium to galvanize popular support. By early August, the ostensible reason for armed conflict, the assassination of an Austro-Hungarian archduke, had already become a side note to a larger European war. Polarization of Europe, 1887 to 1914. In August 1914, the Independent magazine viewed the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand as a relatively insignificant reason for the war. The war led to global financial chaos, suspended international commerce, and caused widespread destruction across Europe. The magazine dismissed ethnicity, race, religion, and national interests as primary motivations, instead attributing the conflict to the balance of power theory. People involved in the war were essentially enemies only on paper, with no personal animosity. The war's anticipation and preparation were unprecedented, with soldiers knowing their roles and enemies. No war in history has been so long anticipated, so carefully prepared for and so thoroughly discussed, not only in the Privy Councils, but in the press of all nations. Every European soldier knew where his uniform and rifle were stored. He also thought he knew as well where he was to fight, with whom he was to fight and when. The Independent magazine. To understand the long-term origins of the war in 1914, it is essential to understand how the powers formed into two competing sets that shared common aims and enemies. Both sets became, by August 1914, Germany and Austria-Hungary on one side and Russia, France, and Britain on the other side. German realignment to Austria-Hungary and Russian realignment to France, 1887 to 1892. In 1887, the reinsurance treaty between Germany and Russia was replaced by the dual alliance between Germany and Austria-Hungary. This change was initiated by Count Leo von Caprivi, who replaced Otto von Bismarck as Chancellor, and was advised to adopt a more straightforward approach. In response, Russia formed the Franco-Russian alliance with France, which lasted until 1917. This shift was driven by Russia's need for an ally amidst a major famine and rising revolutionary activities. The alliance developed from financial ties between Russia and France, eventually leading to diplomatic and military cooperation. French distrust of Germany. The Franco-Prussian War in 1870–1871 and Germany's unification led to lasting animosity between France and Germany. Germany's victory resulted in the annexation of Alsace-Lorraine, causing resentment in France and the rise of revanchism, a desire for revenge. Bismarck attempted to balance the situation by isolating France and managing relationships with Austria-Hungary and Russia. Despite France's recovery and rebuilding, French leaders felt insecure due to Germany's larger population and industry. By the 1890s, revanchism was no longer a primary factor for French leaders but persisted in public opinion. French efforts for détente with Germany were unsuccessful, leading to the belief that war was inevitable. British alignment towards France and Russia, 1898–1907, the Triple Entente. After Bismarck's departure in 1890, France successfully isolated Germany, leading to the formation of the informal Triple Entente. Key components were the 1894 Franco-Russian alliance, the 1904 Entente Cordiale with Britain, and the 1907 Anglo-Russian Convention. Britain shifted from its policy of splendid isolation due to the Second Boer War isolation and signed agreements with France and Russia, mainly focused on colonial affairs. Some historians argue that Britain aligned with France and Russia to counter Germany's assertive foreign policy and naval buildup, while others suggest it was due to Germany's inability to provide imperial security. The Triple Entente improved British relations with France and Russia, intensifying hostility towards Germany. The Entente was not a mutual defense alliance, allowing Britain to make its own foreign policy decisions in 1914. Historians caution against simplistic comparisons between the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance, as the Entente was more of a shared frame of mind or general policy. Diplomatic incidents between 1905 and 1914 heightened tensions and reinforced existing alignments. The crisis. The crisis seems comic, its obscure origin, the questions at stake, the conduct of the actors had comic. The results were tragic. Tension between France and Germany and between Germany and England have been increased, the armaments race received new impetus, the conviction that an early war was inevitable spread through the governing class of Europe. The American historian Raymond James Sontag. The First Moroccan Crisis, 1905–1906, strengthened the Entente Cordiale between France and Britain, as Germany challenged France's interests in Morocco. Spain, affected by this, signed the Pact of Cartagena with the UK and France in 1907. The Bosnian Crisis, 1908, saw Austria-Hungary annexing Bosnia and Herzegovina, straining relations with Russia and Serbia. Russia's response was to support pro-Russian sentiments in the Balkans, causing concerns for Austria-Hungary. The Agadir crisis in Morocco, 1911, led to increased tensions among France, Germany, and Britain, with France establishing a protectorate over Morocco. British support for France during this crisis reinforced the Entente, increased Anglo-German estrangement, and deepened divisions. A secret naval agreement between Britain and France was made, with the Royal Navy protecting France's northern coast and the French Navy focusing on the western Mediterranean. This series of events contributed to the growing tensions and divisions among the European powers. The wars. In the Italo-Turkish War, the Kingdom of Italy defeated the Ottoman Empire in North Africa in 1911–1912. Italy easily captured the important coastal cities, but its army failed to advance far into the interior. Italy captured the Ottoman Tripolitania Vilayet, a province whose most notable sub-provinces, or sanjaks, were Fezzan, Cyrenaica, and Tripoli itself. The territories together formed what was later known as Italian Libya. The main significance for World War I was that it was now clear that no great power still appeared to wish to support the Ottoman Empire, which paved the way for the Balkan Wars.
The Balkan Wars, 1912 to 1913, consisted of two conflicts in the Balkan Peninsula, involving the Ottoman Empire, for Balkan states, and later Bulgaria.
The First War saw the defeat of the Ottoman Empire, leading to a weakened position and increased international tension between Russia and Austria-Hungary. This weakened state of the Ottoman Empire and the strengthened Kingdom of Serbia disrupted the balance of power in Europe. Serbia's demands for territorial reapportionment and Russia's failure to pressure Serbia to back down strained relations between Austria-Hungary and Germany. The Balkan War's outcomes also raised concerns about a potentially too powerful Russia, prompting Germany and Austria-Hungary to consider a potential war with Russia within the next few years. The Franco-Russian alliance, initially defensive, was formed to protect both countries from German attacks. Throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s, France and Russia agreed not to provoke conflicts that could activate the alliance. However, in the years leading up to World War I, this stance changed. As the Balkan Wars unfolded, France began to acknowledge the strategic importance of the Balkans for Russia. If a conflict in the Balkans led to a war between Austria-Hungary and Serbia, France committed to supporting Russia. This shift in the alliance's approach made the Balkan region a security concern for Russia and France, and any war originating in the Balkans would be considered a casus foederis, triggering the alliance. This transformation, as described by Christopher Clark and Ott, played a significant role in shaping the events of 1914.
Anglo-German détente, 1912-14.
Despite various crises and tensions between European countries before World War I, historians argue that a European war in 1914 was not inevitable. The Anglo-German naval arms race paused in 1912, and in 1913, Britain and Germany signed an agreement regarding African territories. Tensions related to British interests in Persia and India were also present. Despite initial impressions, Kaiser Wilhelm was seen as a peace advocate. The end of the naval arms race, reduced colonial rivalries, and increased diplomatic cooperation in the Balkans led to an improved image of Germany in Britain before the war. The British diplomat Arthur Nicholson wrote in May 1914, "Since I have been at the Foreign Office I have not seen such calm waters." The Anglophile German ambassador Karl Max, Prince Lichnowsky, deplored that Germany had acted hastily without waiting for the British offer of mediation in July 1914 to be given a chance.
Domestic political factors.
In Germany, left-wing parties like the Social Democratic Party gained significant influence, causing concern among the Prussian Junkers who feared the left-wing rise. Some argue that the Junkers sought an external war to divert attention from domestic issues and strengthen government support. However, others believe German conservatives were ambivalent about war due to potential negative consequences. Austria-Hungary was a multinational empire with 11 official nationalities, facing internal struggles for national rights. Despite this, the Habsburg lands experienced economic growth and many citizens associated the empire with stability and development. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand, a proponent of peace, may have contributed to escalating the July crisis into war. Serbian policy aimed to consolidate gains from the Balkan Wars and achieve a greater Serbia, which included unifying lands with significant Serb populations within Austria-Hungary. This goal was driven by a strong nationalist culture and a cult of assassination. The Serbian government officially focused on avoiding conflicts but struggled to control the actions of terrorist groups like the Black Hand, who sought to provoke a war with Austria-Hungary. Russia supported Serbia as a fellow Slavic state and encouraged Serbia to target Austria-Hungary to prevent conflicts with another potential Russian ally, Bulgaria. Imperialism. The impact of imperialism and colonial rivalries on the origins of World War I. Imperial rivalries between major European powers like France, Britain, Russia, and Germany played a significant role in the formation of the Triple Entente and Germany's relative isolation. Imperial opportunism, such as the Italian attack on Ottoman Libyan provinces, also contributed to the Balkan Wars, altering the balance of power in the region. German isolation was partly due to its aggressive imperial policy, wealth politic, which aimed to transform Germany into a global power. This policy contributed to the Triple Entente and reinforced Britain's alliances with France and Russia. Historians have different views on the extent to which Weltpolitik and the Anglo-German naval race isolated Germany. The Triple Entente was initially conceived as a means to secure imperial security among Britain, France, and Russia, rather than as a counterweight to the Triple Alliance. This alignment intensified hostility towards Germany, channeling it into the German Empire. Imperial opportunism, such as the Italo-Turkish War and the Moroccan crises, further impacted the situation. Germany's attempts to drive a wedge between Britain and France during these conflicts led to its diplomatic isolation. In 1914, Africa was relatively peaceful, with most of the continent divided among imperial powers. Role of businesses and financial institutions. Lenin's interpretation. Marxism attributes war to economic interests and rivalries, in this case, imperialism. Vladimir Lenin argued that imperialism is the monopoly stage of capitalism, which emerges from the free competition stage of capitalism and is characterized by the presence of 5 basic features. 1. The concentration of production and capital has developed to such a high stage that it has created monopolies which play a decisive role in economic life. 2. The merging of bank capital with industrial capital, and the creation, on the basis of this finance capital, of a financial oligarchy. 3. The export of capital as distinguished from the export of commodities acquires exceptional importance. 4. The formation of international monopolist capitalist associations which share the world among themselves. 5. The territorial division of the whole world among the biggest capitalist powers is completed. Lenin concluded that these 5 features of imperialism had been established by the turn of the 20th century, after the great powers had spent the final decades of the prior century acquiring nearly all the remaining territory of the world that had not yet been colonized. The largest and most lucrative uncolonized or semi-colonized territories at the time of the war were that of Persia, Turkey, and most of China beyond the treaty ports. Having completed the division of the world among themselves at the beginning of the century, the developed capitalist states would thereafter compete for hegemony in the form of a redivision of those territories, both in the industrialized areas, and in primarily agrarian areas. Other views. Richard Hamilton analyzed the argument that the war was initiated to secure colonies and raw materials for industrialists and bankers. While he acknowledged imperialism's role in decision-making, he believed it was not for logical, economic reasons. He pointed out that Bismarck rejected imperialist pressure. Although some business leaders favored peace for stability and investment, the German leadership prioritized land and military power. William Mulligan argued that economic factors generally promoted peace, and pre-war trade conflicts never escalated into conflict. Governments utilized bankers and financiers for their interests, and the commercial and financial elite believed peace was essential for economic development. Social Darwinism. Social Darwinism, a theory influenced by Darwinism, impacted European intellectuals and strategic thinkers between 1870 and 1914. It emphasized struggle between nations and races as natural, with only the fittest nations surviving. This theory encouraged German assertiveness in global economics and military power. German colonial rule in Africa was a display of nationalism and moral superiority, often portraying natives as other and promoting racist views. The theory justified Germany's right to acquire territories as the survival of the fittest. Social Darwinism also fueled tensions between Germans and Slavs, with many Germans viewing Slavs as natural opponents. Senior German generals like Helmuth von Moltke considered war necessary for the survival of their people and culture. War was seen as a natural and useful instrument of policy, with some leaders like Moltke believing it was inevitable. Nationalism made war a competition between peoples, downplaying diplomacy and international agreements. Social Darwinism normalized war as an instrument of policy and justified its use across Europe. Arms race. By the 1870s to 1880s, major powers prepared for large-scale war, although none expected one. They developed conscription systems, mobilization plans, and expanded their armies and reserves. The size of military manpower increased over time. War plans assumed short wars and victory, unprepared for the long stalemate that occurred from 1914 to 1918. The arms race played a crucial role in the outbreak of the First World War, as it heightened military preparedness and created a sense of urgency for conflict. Example, Germany in 1874 had a regular professional army of 420,000 with an additional 1.3 million reserves. By 1897, the regular army was 545,000 strong and the reserves 3.4 million. The French in 1897 had 3.4 million reservists, Austria 2.6 million, and Russia 4.0 million. The Hague Conferences of 1899 and 1907 aimed to discuss disarmament and revise international law. While most signatories supported disarmament, Germany did not agree to binding arbitration and mediation. Nations tried to shape international law to their advantage, and the Kaiser opposed potential U.S. disarmament proposals. Anglo-German naval race. The debate among historians regarding the significance of the German naval buildup in deteriorating Anglo-German relations. Despite Germany's efforts, particularly championed by Grand Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz and supported by Wilhelm II, Germany never managed to catch up with Britain's Royal Navy. Britain responded with its own significant naval expansion, especially after the launch of the Dreadnought battleship in 1906. The British Navy's overwhelming response made it clear to Germany that it was unlikely to match Britain's naval power. Despite narrowing the tonnage gap, the Royal Navy maintained a considerable advantage. While some argue that the naval arms race wasn't a significant cause of World War I, others point out the growing concern in Britain, particularly due to Admiral John Fisher's ideas and financial constraints. In 1914, Germany shifted its focus to building submarines, effectively ending the naval arms race, but kept this change in policy secret to delay other powers from following suit. Russian interests in the Balkans and the Ottoman Empire. Major Russian goals included strengthening St. Petersburg's role as the protector of Eastern Christians in the Balkans, such as in Serbia. Although Russia enjoyed a booming economy, growing population, and large armed forces, its strategic position was threatened by an expanding Ottoman military trained by German experts and using the latest technology. The start of the war refocused attention on old Russian goals, expelling the Ottomans from Constantinople, extending Russian dominion into eastern Anatolia and Persian Azerbaijan, and annexing Galicia. Conquest of the Straits would have assured Russian predominance in the Black Sea and Russian access to the Mediterranean. Technical and military factors. Short war illusion. Traditional narratives suggested that both sides in the war believed it would end quickly, with the phrase "over by Christmas" in 1914. However, modern historians argue that military and civilian leaders, including Moltke, Ludendorff, Joffre, Kitchener, and Gray, recognized the potential for a long and destructive war. They planned for swift victories but also acknowledged the possibility of years of conflict and profound political consequences. This dual expectation may have prevented a fuller understanding of the war's risks. Primacy of offensive and war by timetable. Mobilization plans played a significant role in the outbreak of World War I, as military commanders believed seizing the initiative was crucial. These plans led nations to develop strategies for striking first and created a war-by-timetable scenario. Rigid mobilization schedules limited diplomacy and put pressure on policymakers. Russia initially ordered a partial mobilization against Austria-Hungary but later realized it needed a full mobilization. Germany's Schlieffen Plan relied on speedy mobilization to defeat France first. As Russian preparations threatened Germany, they declared war on Russia before Russia declared war on Germany. The complexity of these events highlights the intricate factors that contributed to the war's outbreak. Christopher Clark states, German efforts at mediation, which suggested that Austria should halt in Belgrade and use the occupation of the Serbian capital to ensure its terms were met, were rendered futile by the speed of Russian preparations, which threatened to force the Germans to take countermeasures before mediation could begin to take effect. Clark also states, the Germans declared war on Russia before the Russians declared war on Germany. But by the time that happened, the Russian government had been moving troops and equipment to the German front for a week. The Russians were the first great power to issue an order of general mobilization, and the first Russo-German clash took place on German, not on Russian soil, following the Russian invasion of East Prussia. That doesn't mean that the Russians should be blamed for the outbreak of war. Rather, it alerts us to the complexity of the events that brought war about and the limitations of any thesis that focuses on the culpability of one actor. Conclude. Consensus on the origins of the war remains elusive, since historians disagree on key factors and place differing emphasis on a variety of factors. That is compounded by historical arguments changing over time, particularly as classified historical archives become available, and as perspectives and ideologies of historians have changed. The deepest division among historians is between those who see Germany and Austria-Hungary as having driven events and those who focus on power dynamics among a wider set of actors and circumstances. Secondary fault lines exist between those who believe that Germany deliberately planned a European war, those who believe that the war was largely unplanned but was still caused principally by Germany and Austria-Hungary taking risks, and those who believe that some or all of the other powers, Russia, France, Serbia, United Kingdom, played a more significant role in causing the war than has been traditionally suggested.